Time now for the Wiltfong Whiparound with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, let's start with a five-star athlete. Terry Bussey, the Texas native, will announce on Thursday. It's down to Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, and A&M. Now, he was in Baton Rouge over the weekend, taking in that big win, but with a decision looming, what's the latest out of this visit?
Well, the Aggies are the 24/7 Sports crystal ball favorite for Terry Bussey, but LSU and Oklahoma are two programs that nobody is sleeping on down the stretch in this recruitment. And Terry told me on Sunday evening that he is yet to make up his mind. So that still gives these programs 3 days to try and close the nation's #1 athlete recruit. And at LSU, he told me that it was an amazing visit, truly loved everything about Baton Rouge, as Cooper knows. As you know, night games in Death Valley are special experiences. LSU rallies to beat Arkansas in front of Terry Bussey. He says the game day environment and the fans were electric. It was loud. It was great. He enjoyed his time with Brian Kelly. Spent time with Mike Denbrock and Matt House. Why did he spend time with both coordinators? Because they plan to use him on both sides of the ball. They plan to use him on special teams. He's 24/7 Sports #1 ranked athlete in the country for a reason, and he liked LSU's pitch. He's got a lot to think about going into his decision. I haven't heard anything to make me change my crystal ball from Texas A&M yet, but Oklahoma and LSU really pushing hard here down the stretch to change that.
Steve, big win for Dan Lanning and company in Eugene over the weekend. They win 42-6 over Colorado. They had some talent in the building as well. Jeremiah McClellan, the 4-star, committed to Ohio State. They also had Jason Brown from the state of Washington, the highly heralded running back, and then also Jericho Johnson, 4-star defensive lineman. So did Dan Lanning in their win over Colorado, was that able to move the needle for the Ducks?
Yeah, absolutely. And they had the big commitment in the 2026 class from Tony Cumberland. And I think they got a great shot to close a few of these 2024 prospects that were on campus as they aim for a second straight top 10 recruiting class. I would probably peg them as the one to beat for top 247 defensive lineman Jericho Johnson at this point in his process. Washington is the other contender. I can't wait for that Oregon-Washington game. Perhaps that will help settle some recruiting battles. And Jason Brown, there was a time where Michigan State looked like they were the team to beat for the top 247 running back, and perhaps they still are. But I would say with the changes that are happening out there in East Lansing, and this is a guy that's always loved Oregon. He told me the environment was electric. It was his first game at Autzen, and it definitely left a lasting impression on him. Talked about the way Oregon was moving the ball, utilizing their backs. He said that was appealing and just said it was a good environment with good people and good football. I would say Oregon is trending for Jason Brown right now, but they're also trying to flip Nate Frazier, guys, so it'll be interesting to see who that second back is in the Oregon class. And then they had top 247 receiver Jeremiah McClellan on campus. Speaking of flips, he's currently committed to Ohio State, but Oregon has stayed on him. He's been to campus numerous times. He really enjoyed being in what he called was an electric environment. Talked about the high energy of the program and said the future under Dan Lanning is going up fast. He can't wait to see what they do next. Now, it's tough to flip a receiver committed to Ohio State, so I'm certainly not predicting that just yet. He's expected back in Columbus for the Maryland game, but Oregon's still trying to chip away at Jeremiah McClellan. And guys, they're going to land some of those 25s and 26s that were on campus too. You have to go to Duck Territory at Oregon247sports.com to read more about those names.
Yeah, those are just the highlights. 24 total recruits on campus this weekend. Steve, it's about that time of the segment. I ask for the likes. There you go. Double thumbs up. Go ahead, smash that like button so we know that you're watching. You talk about electric atmospheres. How about Penn State dominating Iowa 31-0 in the whiteout game that helped them land 2 recruits? I want to ask you about one, 4-star linebacker DJ McClary. What will he bring to Happy Valley?
Well, turning on his film, it made me think of the old Candlestick Park where the 49ers used to play with the baseball diamond on the field at the same time. So it was cool to see some throwback high school football stadiums in his film. And he's kind of a throwback player. He does not come off the field, plays quarterback, plays running back, obviously has the traits to be a terrific linebacker. He can run, he can hit. And so I just think instinctually Penn State got another naturally talented football player as they're off and running early in the 2025 cycle.
Steve, a couple other names that made their way to Happy Valley this weekend. 4-star defensive lineman Ernest Willer, also 3-star edge Jalen Harvey. How are they standing right now with those two?
Well, with Ernest Willer, I think that they're in fantastic position for him. He said it was great. He said the stadium was literally shaking. And, man, Penn State, they don't miss at wideouts. James Franklin and company, did you see the video of him high-fiving all the recruits in attendance? They certainly took advantage on a night like this, and they held Iowa to just 31 offensive plays. That's how dominant the defense was. Ernest Willer loved seeing that. Jalen Harvey loved seeing that. Now, they've been pushing for Jalen for quite some time. There's been times where it's looked like he was close to jumping into the fold for Penn State. He loved what he saw from Manny Diaz and that Penn State defense. And one of the reasons why he hasn't jumped in yet for any school is because, as he told Brian Doan, our colleague, he doesn't want to decommit after jumping in. But he's been to Penn State numerous times, saw another incredible environment, and there's no question that they're certainly one of the teams to beat for him moving forward, just like they are for so many 25s and 26s that were in Happy Valley for this one.
All right, we talked about some big winners in those fun environments with Penn State and Notre Dame. Not so much. They fell to Ohio State on the field, but they did gain some traction with 3-star defensive lineman and current Georgia commit Nnamdi Ogboko. That's a tough one. What are you hearing from that visit, Steve?
Well, Notre Dame's been pushing hard for him as they try and add a massive defensive line prospect to a recruiting class that ranks number 8 nationally. He's certainly one of their most coveted prospects left on the board, and he's a personality fit for Notre Dame as much as he is for Marcus Freeman and Al Golden and the Irish defense. Now, Georgia, they absolutely covet him as well. They're trying to put together the best defensive line class in the country. Trey Scott has been staying on top of Ogboko as well. And this Notre Dame visit came as no surprise to Georgia. They knew that he would be in South Bend, and kind of similar to how tough it is to flip a defensive lineman, how tough it is to flip a receiver from Ohio State. It's tough to flip a defensive lineman from Georgia, but Notre Dame, they're going to keep trying to chip away at him, and they were certainly excited to see him on campus over the weekend.
Steve, let's stick with Georgia. Top 247 receiver Nye Carr decommitted over the weekend. A little bit of a surprise. He's been committed for over a year. What team should we now keep an eye out for Nye Carr?
Well, the program that I'm watching the closest right now is Miami. I think the Hurricanes have really risen up his list here as his process has continued. Now, he's going to be at Auburn this weekend, so maybe the Tigers can rise as well. And Florida State's the third school that is in the middle of it for Nye Carr right now. But Miami, they're the program I'm hearing the most about right now.
All right, let's talk about another wide receiver that we discuss many times on this show. Ryan Wingo, the 5-star wide receiver, visited Mizzou this weekend, but we talked about this on the show last week. Texas really seems to have the momentum here right now. But what impression was Missouri able to make on the in-state kid?
Well, with it being at a neutral site there in St. Louis, Coach Drinkwitz and his staff were not allowed to have any interaction with Ryan Wingo, so they did the next best thing. They threw the ball to Luther Burden all day. 10 catches, 177 yards for another St. Louis native. And talking to the Wingo camp, they said it was a great time, great tailgate, great game. Missouri's undefeated, and they continue to give him reason to stay in state, to go play for the Tigers. Now, Texas is still the program that I view as the one to beat. He's got an official visit scheduled to Colorado this weekend for what's going to be a massive official visit weekend in Boulder. But Mizzou, they're hanging in there right near the top of the list for Ryan Wingo. And again, Luther Burden's big-time performance, a cool atmosphere in St. Louis. Missouri continues to hang in there for their most coveted prospect still on the board.
Steve, Billy Napier and the Gators had some talent on hand this weekend as they beat Charlotte 22-9 in Gainesville. Jeremiah Smith, 5-star, he's committed to Ohio State. They also had 4-star defensive back Charles Lester committed to Florida State. Big weekend for the Gators. How are they doing working on their flips potentially of Jeremiah Smith and Charles Lester?
Well, they're trying to bring spatula season down there to the Swamp, and if they keep playing at a high level, they're going to have a chance for some big-time flips. I think that this is just the case. You're keeping each other warm, keeping tabs on each other. We're a quarter of the way through the season right now. Florida has a chance over the next couple months to continue making statements for these guys. Jeremiah Smith in the past has raved about Billy Napier, his track record and background with wide receivers, and that being a place that he thought he could be potentially developed. But like I said in the Oregon segment about Jeremiah McClellan, it's still tough sledding when you're trying to flip a wide out from Ohio State. And these guys have been honest with Brian Hartline, Ryan Day, and company about every visit they've taken and all the schools that they're talking to. And so until I hear differently, I still like Ohio State to hang on to Jeremiah Smith and Charles Lester. Obviously, Florida State's ripping and roaring. No program recruited him harder, but he did have high interest in Florida. He had high interest in Colorado, and so those programs aren't going to go away. And Florida got a chance to show them the swamp on a Saturday night where they got another win over Charlotte.